I should start with the year 2013 because this is the year as well when we marked the century of organized cultural heritage protection in Slovenia. Exactly 100 years ago, Dr. Francesc Tele took up the duties of a conservator for the province of Carniola. This happened as a part of decentralization of the Central Commission for the Monuments Protection in Vienna. I have to say that he was very progressive in his thinking. Already in 1934, medieval part of Ljubljana as a whole was set under custodial protection. It has to be said that in this period of time only buildings were protected, not the areas, and that's how that was quite advanced. Today, the international principles related to the protection and conservation of the cultural heritage are globally well integrated in our national legal frameworks. Slovenia is one of the few countries in Europe where protection of cultural heritage is a constitutional category. Properties and areas identified as heritage are listed in the Register of Cultural Heritage. There are two immovable heritage categories: individual properties and areas. As well, we divided cultural heritage according to their significance. The broadest category, with the lowest grade of protection, is cultural heritage, where the protection is assured by the Spatial Planning Act. The next category includes cultural monuments of local importance, and the third category, the highest grade, includes monuments of national importance. Both spatial plans and designation acts have two functions. In them, heritage is made concrete. With other words, its location, category, content, and extent are specified. Also, guidance for heritage intervention is specified in so-called protection regime. Protection regime for individual properties is applying on the formal appearance, interior and exterior of the buildings as defined by scale, size, style, construction, materials, color, and decoration. The elements that make up the special character and interest of the building and have to be conserved are external features such as decorative facade, windows and doors, as well the space and internal layouts. The plan of the building is one of its characteristics. Interior plans should be respected and left unaltered if it's possible. Internal feature of interest, such as decorated plaster surfaces, paneling, floors, windows, doors, and door cases. And of course, details such as moldings, stucco work, walls, and ceiling decoration. They can be just valuable in the buildings of, let's say, simple house from 19th century or functional building, as well in grander architecture, and can be a building's most important features. Heritage protection areas. In a conservation area, the main emphasis is on external appearance, surface materials, walls and roofs, and the details of window, doors and roof lights are all as well important. While not all the buildings in a conservation area are of historic interest, many have original internal and external features that contribute to the significance of the conservation area as a whole. Removing such features could therefore have an adverse impact on its overall character. However, this historic environment is also a fragile resource. We have an obligation and a duty to manage change and in a sensitive and sustainable way, and to ensure that that significance is passed on to future generations. We can say that the heritage protection registration provides the starting point for establishment of protections. The second segment is aimed at acquiring in-depth knowledge of its values. Historic buildings vary greatly in the extent to which they can accommodate changes without loss of their significance. Some are sensitive to even slight alteration, particularly externally, and where they retain important interiors, pictures, fittings, and details, of course. Others may change significantly, and restoration is not considered visible. This consideration will influence as well the extent of change that is appropriate to improve energy efficiency. As already explained, in Slovenia, the general parameters are defined in spatial plans and designation acts. The protection consent, issued by the Institute for the Protection of Cultural Heritage of Slovenia, must be obtained as well to any intervention in heritage, regardless of whatever the specific intervention is defined as a construction by the Building Act or not. The consent must be obtained as well in case of a minor intervention where a building permit is not required. For issuing the protection conditions, EHPC implements a variety of researches that can lead to the identification of the original house and its issuing transformation. The preliminary studies, surveys can determine the physical fabric, materials, maybe undiscovered materials. As well, some other researches can be stipulated by the conditions to understand and master a building's specificity and construction elements in the endeavor to preserve cultural value. The assessments of significance is a key task in the process of upgrading historic buildings for thermal efficiency or other works and can vary considerably in scope and detail from the large and complex and quick and easy. The conservation plan is normally anticipated when if the intervention is a complex one, if there is a danger of destruction or risk to protection values, or if the conservation and restoration works is needed. It's divided into two sections. The first one is analytical section, in which is determined what is important and specifying the components of a monument that should be conserved. This section includes a historical and documentary study, a socio-economical study, architectural plans, a detailed inspection of the building, a construction and structural analysis in situ on the spot, tests, and as well some tests in a laboratory. Of course, a multidisciplinary approach is the best one in providing a full range of results, studies, and various analyses to gather all the necessary information to evaluate and diagnose the physical feature which can contribute or not to the character of the heritage. So when we know what to do with the building, what features are to be kept and where, in which part of the building we can alter something, this is the basis to do the restoration or renovation project. The execution section provides the policies and guidelines for the conservation and protection of the monuments, with the main objective to maintain the cultural values of the buildings as whole, of course following conservation principles such as authenticity, reversibility, compatibility, and minimum intervention. The execution section as well contains a conservation restoration project for executing conservation works if needed. The project can contain the detailed instruction for the restoration, precisely defined conservation restoration methods, and plans for reconstruction of key elements which were lost or damaged during the previous alteration or physical decay. Let's say something about energy efficiency in historic buildings. For historic buildings and those of traditional construction, an appropriate balance needs to be achieved between building conservation and measures to improve energy efficiency. If lasting damage is to be avoided, both the building's character and significance and its fabric has to be taken into the consideration. That part is presented some of the, let's say, methods which were already used, of course, in the others. I just present kind of small projects, parts of them, not all of them, which were made on one building. Renewable energy, improving installation systems. These upgrading works of installation will offer significant thermal benefit, can be all applied sometimes with little difficulty in the majority of older buildings, and the energy savings can be achieved with reasonable payback time. They should also have a minimal impact on the character and appearance of the building. In the case of comprehensive restoration of Castle Reichenburg, the new services systems works on biomass. New facilities were put into the building outside of the castle. As well, in the case of governmental palace, a fixed building service was upgraded with new ones, central cooling system, which is energy efficient, have effective controls, and etc. Works were done mainly using previous path to minimize disturbance to the existing fabric. At the same time, roof was restored and new elements for ventilation were added. Draft proofing. The control of draft or air infiltration is the first step to take in preparing proposal for upgrading the energy efficiency of older building. Here is the case of Church of St. Michael, which is listed as a monument of national importance. It's really, really drafty inside, and here the conservation plan was made, and some solutions were made how to resolve that problems. Gaps between panels, which is actually the external wall of the Church of St. Michael, were creating significant drawth. The solution was determined in conservation plan. So the existing gap between two panels, one is at the external wall and one in the internal wall, will be filled with some kind of isolation, and the old pine panels will be reused. Adding isolation. Upgrading works at that field should be those which create minimal damage to the building, where possible by using existing emptiness, voids, and largely reversible techniques and detailing. The use of insulation materials, which are highly compatible with traditional construction, is usually stipulated as well by the protection conditions. Loft space insulation. As well, that improvement can be applied to almost all immovable cultural heritage. Usually the need for roof repairs provided opportunity to add insulation. Insulation can be installed either at the ceiling level or below the roof itself. The difference is that the ventilation path is retained above the previous level of the roof, but those kinds of changes are usually acceptable as they are carrying minimal impact on the appearance of the roof. Many dormer windows can be difficult to insulate without altering their original proportions. In the case shown at the slide, there was made kind of a compromise solution. Actually, as well, the restoration of the flat roofs can be done without any difficulties. Here is the case in National Assembly Palace. The project is already prepared. The works is just partly done. Only in the part of glass roof, because in that part the losses of energy were very, very high. So that's why they did that part, but the rest of the roof will be done when the finances will be gathered. Installation of cavity walls. As well, when maintaining modern architecture already built with some kind of insulation materials, new one, better, can be added relatively easily without any effect to the features of the buildings. The project presented on the slide is needed primarily as a result of decay of some fabric. Frames of the windows are quite ill, and of course it has to be some existing thermal bridging is already there, so it has to be resolved as well. So you can see the original detail and the improved detail of where the glass and facade, which is covered with the stone panels, is attached. Improving insulation externally or internally. And the opportunity to improve the thermal performance of walls externally is very limited when we are talking about historical buildings. This is because of the impact external insulation has on the appearance of the building, notably on its proportions and, of course, on the details. Possible exceptions is there where renderings require complete replacement, as in the case which is on the slide, and if the installation of external insulation can be achieved without compromising appearance of building. Protection regime does not apply on internal surfaces in the buildings which are part of the heritage protection area. So there you can do, well, of course, whatever you want or whatever is right. But for the individual properties, the internal wall should always be carefully investigated in advance of any changes. They could hide some kind of interesting features, like such as early plasters or paint schemes. They are often hidden in behind the paneling or other coverings. For example, timber paneling, plaster moldings, or that enriches decoration are important elements in the history of the building, and they need to be preserved. For example, this saw, which are we visiting today. Insulation of the ground floor can be applied as well to almost all immovable cultural heritage. If the works demands an intervention in the ground, which is the part of the archaeological site, the preliminary investigation must be done before in order to prevent the destruction of potential archaeological remains. Usually those kind of intervention are combined with the problems of humidity in the basements, which is often in the historical, which is often an issue in the historical buildings. Windows, of course, are those elements which are mostly changed, which were changed in the past and are changed rapidly today. Windows opening and frames gives a building's elevation its character. They should not be altered in their proportions or details, as they are important elements of the design. As well, if you add the external insulation, the depth to which window frames are recessed within the wall is of historical significance and greatly affects the character of a building. These too should be respected. The importance of conserving traditional fenestration and its detailing cannot be stressed enough. Replacing, for example, like in this case, single glazed windows with double glazed PVC windows can be very damaging to the special character and appearance of the building. The fundamental objection amongst many are that double glazed sealed units are much more thickened in the dimension of glazing bars, or result is extremely poor facsimile stuck to the face of the glass. As shown at the picture, mostly when the wooden windows are replaced with the PVC ones, the problem is as well how they are incorporated or built into the opening. Usually very, very poorly, as shown at that picture. On the other hand, on the other side of the slide, you have kind of a original window and improved window where the glazing, where it's a new one. Because this house is a heritage, the way of opening outside wings were previously done to outside of the walls, and improved window is done to inside, and the inner window are glazed with double glass. Now I will show some, let's say, some solution which are made or are in progress. For example, I have to say that it would be neither sustainable nor cost-effective to replace, let's say, 100 years old window that is capable of repair and upgrading with a new double-glazed alternative. If it sometimes is possible to incorporate the thinner double-glazed system, such as is the case of National Gallery, which is now under the reconstruction. The project is involving, let's say, the restoration of the part which was used by National Gallery and the part which was used by for the gym is going to be converted as well for the uses of National Gallery. It is important house building from the late 19th century. From the same time as this one, so the features are quite similar in the both of them. Here the main problem was as well because this is the gallery which hosts our national paintings, which has to have, let's say, constant humidity and constant temperature as well for preserving them as movable heritage. But the solution, because in Slovenia the most historical buildings for fenestration were used so-called double windows, so the outer wings usually are just repaired and the inner wings are supposed to be, like in this case, are going to be glazed with double thickness. This is as well the, let's say, how they will do it. The frame, the old frame, is going to be upgrading with new double glazed alternative, and as well some brushes or will be added, are added as well. As well in the case of National Assembly, here we are talking about, let's say, the building from the 50s of 20th century. The windows are made from oak, and as well they just used new, they just incorporate new glazed windows, new glazed, double glazed glass inside, and everything else was, let's say, restored. In the case of the comprehensive restoration of Urban Palace, the problems of the windows was that they were quite, they were very damaged because of the lack of the maintenance, and that's why the solution was that they were replaced with new ones. As I said, the outer wings made as exact copies, and the inner were glazed with double glazed glass. I can conclude, each unit of cultural heritage is unique, and that's how we have to determine what is important and how changes can be made with the least effect on the character of the building. Actually, an informed approach can achieve significant energy improvements in most cases, although not always to the standards recommended in the regulations. However, much can be achieved. For example, in the inhabited houses suffering from minor distortion, they can be improved through the maintenance work, and as such contribute to developing of life standards and comforts of its inhabitants. Thank you for your attention.